Good morning, everybody. Thanks for coming along to hear us talking about phonics this morning. I'm going to be talking about the place of phonics in the Key Stage 2 languages curriculum. My name's Claire Seckham, and I was a secondary teacher for 14 years, and I've now been a primary languages teacher for 16 years. I currently teach Spanish in 2 primary schools from reception to Year 6. So this is what the national curriculum for Key Stage 2 languages looks like. It's not very long, and it's certainly not as detailed as we would like. Its purpose of study and the aims sections are the same as for Key Stage 3, but the subject content is different. In Key Stage 3, there is no explicit mention of phonics, although some of the attainment targets do need a knowledge of phonics and of the sound spelling link to be able to do them. It is, however, mentioned explicitly in the Key Stage 2 national curriculum, which implies that the main groundwork needs to be done in primary so that children can hit the ground running and achieve in Key Stage 3 and beyond. So this is from the Key Stage 2 subject content introduction, and the orange highlights are mine. So first of all, we can teach any modern or ancient language. So we don't actually teach MFL in Key Stage 2, just FL or languages. The ancient languages are excused the speaking and therefore the phonics. So children who do Latin in Key Stage 2 will be well prepared for the modern European languages in Key Stage 3 in some ways, but not in others. Now, the second point says teaching should provide a balance of spoken and written language. Historically, primary languages were more about the speaking and tended to neglect the writing, but writing is now a fundamental part of what we do. This is important for phonics as it shows it's just as important to be able to say the new sounds as it is to read them and to represent them in writing. Then the aims of the curriculum state that children have to use their knowledge of phonology, grammatical structure, and vocabulary to enable them to understand and to communicate. This is the first mention of the 3 pillars, and it's something that doesn't appear in the Key Stage 3 national curriculum. These are the attainment targets that relate to phonics from the Key Stage 2 curriculum. It's all about beginning and developing an understanding of the sounds in the new language and looking into the sound spelling link. So we start to develop accurate pronunciation and intonation, both so that children can speak accurately and be understood, and so that they can read aloud accurately. So I don't tend to teach intonation explicitly unless it's with question forms, making our voice go up at the end. But it's only when the children speak that I realise how much of my intonation has actually rubbed off on them. We're also encouraged to use authentic resources such as songs and rhymes to help us to explore phonics and to help us to make that sound spelling link. Songs and poems are mentioned briefly in Key Stage 3, but not with a view to explicitly exploring phonics. So we're all familiar now with the concept of the 3 pillars, which have equal weighting and equal importance in the curriculum in Key Stage 2, just as in Key Stage 3 and 4. The more I've supported other schools with their curricula, the more I've come to realise that the 3 pillars are the intent of our curriculum. They're what you set out to teach. Then the 4 modalities, listening, speaking, reading and writing, along with language learning strategies and knowledge about language. There's a lot more information about that in the Key Stage 2 framework, sadly obsolete but still really useful. And of course culture as well joins in with those, and those are your implementation, so what you are going to use to teach your intent. Then your impact is how you assess how well you've taught your intent. And so this represents the 3 I's of your curriculum, rather, of course, than of the subject as a whole at school. It's important that Key Stage 3 teachers are aware of the phonics that their new Year 7s have covered in Key Stage 2. They need to ask, and Key Stage 2 teachers need to tell, because transition is so important. Year 7 teachers can't make assumptions about what the children have done and how they might have done it. It will help them to hit the ground running if they can continue in Key Stage 3 the way that they learned in Key Stage 2, even if they're going to be gradually weaned off it. The Askell Transition Toolkit is a really good way to start off the conversation, and if you Google it, it's really easy to find. It's available for French, Spanish, German, and Chinese. Primary teachers can fill in the empty column to say what they've done for each section and then send it to secondary schools. If you're a secondary teacher, you can send it to the primary teachers and indicate on the form what you would like their children to know. So begin that dialogue. If primary schools have used a bought-in scheme, then phonics will be included in that scheme somehow, and each scheme will do phonics in its own way. These two publications, Physical French Phonics and Physical Spanish Phonics, are widely used in Key Stage 2 by specialists and non-specialists alike. They're published by brilliant publications, and they're the brainchild of the brilliant Sue Cave. The idea is that each phoneme or grapheme has a corresponding image, which in turn shows the child the action that they have to do. The action then reminds them of the sound. So on the cover of the French one, for example, you can see the picture of the monkey, and this is for making the sound oo, and we use it for the oo sound in Spanish as well. Then once the children are familiar with the actions and the sounds, and after lots and lots of repetition, you can use the actions as a quick and easy prompt to correct any errors or misconceptions. The books also have loads of great resources and information as well. I think they would be equally useful in Key Stage 3, and some colleagues have even used it with adult learners as well. So phonics are best embedded in each lesson, particularly at the initial presentation and practice of vocabulary stage. I choose to teach phonics explicitly right from the very start, not leaving it to chance that the children are going to notice what I want them to notice. Time is very precious, of course, in the primary languages classroom. So I've started using phonics to introduce the new vocabulary, so the children are seeing the written word at the very first stage, and therefore not using English phonics to approximate a spelling and a pronunciation of a word in their head, and so that we draw attention to the tricky sounds right from the start. So I begin by introducing each new lexical item using phonics, and we sound out each word. We don't blend at this stage, but I do sometimes hear children quietly blending the sounds as we go along. Then we practice the vocabulary, usually with a PowerPoint grid, where the words are always visible alongside images to indicate meaning. We begin with lots of listening before the children physically say the words. So I say the words, for example, the children have to point at the right word on the grid. I say a word, they tell me which number it is on the grid. It's always good to practice numbers. We sometimes also do a more formal listening activity at this stage. And it's only after the phonics and lots of listening that the children start to say the words themselves using choral repetition. So I've written a post on my blog and in Languages Today magazine about the reasons that I've chosen to present language in this way, and it is definitely paying off. So the next stage will be putting the vocabulary into phrases or sentences by way of a sentence builder or similar. And because the children are happy with the pronunciation, they can focus then on the grammar and the structure. So the first pillar, phonics, leads to a more successful learning of the second pillar, which is the vocabulary, which in turn leads to increased confidence with the grammar and the structure. So like I said, I start teaching phonics right from the beginning of the learning journey, and we add new phonemes as we come across them. So I break the words down into their phonemes, illustrating each one with a physical French or Spanish phonics picture. I can't show those here for copyright reasons. And then we practice sounding the words out before having a go at blending them. So the very first French lesson, you're going to be teaching bonjour. And so here is bonjour broken down into its 5 sounds. So the blue indicates a sound that is pretty much the same as English, whereas the red ones are the sounds that would be represented by the phonics picture. And so we would practice sounding out b, on, j, ou, r, b, on, j, ou, r. And we'll repeat that at least 4 times in one lesson, and then of course recap it in probably 2 lessons after that as well. You can see also that silent letters are indicated in grey. Not so much of an issue in Spanish, but of course it does happen a lot in French. So In Spanish, we've usually covered all of the important phonemes by the middle of year 3. After that, it's constant repetition until the end of year 6. In French, though, things do take a bit longer as there are so many more tricky phonemes. So I hope you can see the very important place that phonics has in the Key Stage 2 curriculum and how our work can and should be built on Key Stage 3 and beyond. Of course, there's a lot more I could say about it, but hopefully this will start the conversation.